Hey everyone. Hey everyone. Okay, I just posted some notes. I'll give you guys a second to read that over. I'll post them in here too. These were the overnight conditions. I already had set them yesterday, but I mean, obviously you guys can go back and review those anyway. Let me just make a quick thread on here too so that you guys have that. I had shared the overnight conditions yesterday on stream, but here they are. And here is a recap of the daily goal plus weekly goal. Okay, there you guys go. Post it in here. Let me get back to my position. Okay, so in the past, this was a really big area for us. You can obviously, you can do the unadjusted if you want, if it makes it a little bit easier for you to remember. I'm not sure if you guys remember this, but remember when we stalled this area back here, and initially when we had tried testing our 7511. I'm just going to do a very quick recap from the past. Okay, so we had 7511.50, 7520. I think it's closer to 7523, even though I've been saying 7521, but it's closer to 2328. And then we had our big areas here. Okay, so previously, just in case you guys forgot, these areas were not successful in clearing. And if you guys remember from, I'm pretty sure from, I think it was from our April 16th, yeah, it was. It was from these April 15th, April 16th ranges. So previously when we had like our 429, 430 point breaks. Okay. And kind of specific to like when these structures here started to break up a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see that. Okay, they had stalled that 346 point range back here. So that was one of the key alignments with this area. Second major alignment with this area was that 460, 463, 464 point range. And mainly off our April 16 to April, it was like this range back in here. I'm not sure if you guys remember this. Like this is off that big break. Remember how they stalled 450 points back here versus tagging 461, 466. So these were those previous 461, 466 point intervals. Okay. And clearing those is what basically gives, remember on the 17th that we had this mass range? That's what basically gives those odds of coming back to highs. Do you see it? Just say yes or no, you guys, so I know that you guys are on the same track. So this is what would give us like the best odds, okay, of getting and tagging and coming back and retesting, because this is what failed previously. Hence we had this massive reduction stick the day after. So this stick right here, remember like the following day they broke it down 110, 115 points, whatever it was. And a lot of that was due to like the potential volatility that we could have had here. So like instead they broke it down 110 points, 118 points. Do you see that? Okay, otherwise that would have easily been that break back up. So, and this ended up happening on Thursday, Friday, and then they recycled it back down that time, back to 74.11, 74.21. I think my mic is down. Hold on. Is that better? I think I had the volume turned down in OBS. So you can kind of see how this aligns with our previous area, and obviously 76.44 is that mass overhead, and we had ended up stalling 7.432, then we had stalled 7.648, 7.642. I know that with the new contract, like they rolled over, and I know even with the previous, like they had still taken out 7644, but it's important that you understand like the key differences here and where they started initially aligning from. Okay, and I think it's a big deal. Like some people might not think it is, but understanding past triggers, past alignment. So these back here were mainly like the 346, the 356 point intervals in between prior to expanding or coming back. Okay, and specific to, you know, like our 16th, 17th, and then we had our April 21st, 24th breaks. Okay, like kind of like back here. You guys can kind of see it. And you can kind of see where they back tested here. Same sort of idea, like they took it back down 421, 432, but they did breach a little tiny bit, if you guys remember back here when we were measuring off the 8th and 9th, beneath that 466, right? Hence holding 72.80s. 72.66 was a little bit more ideal, but we still stayed within that initial 413, 416 point range. And that was initially netted from back in here, okay, off this low. So it's a very, very similar type concept, okay, from like when they initially had broken this range. I don't know if you guys can see this. Do you see this? Like from here to here. Let me just delete this so you can see. Okay, and mainly specific to like these big flip dates. Okay, so while I would have preferred that they maybe held closer to 432, 440, 461, do you know what I mean? Like, we still held above that 413, 412 point ratio, close to 722,950. So this structural hold here was very, 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 very important, because this was also a key flip date in line with our March 31st, April 8th. You could use a 10-day or 8-day to kind of keep track of those, and then it'll give you kind of like a better idea. But for structural support, you guys use a 413 to 426 point range. Okay, does that make sense? Because this is the same thing, same kind of concept. When they came back tested here, I don't know if you guys can see this, from the 31st they brought it back down to that range. So in the future, if and when we come back and clear, I obviously want this area here. So if the range is that 7229.50 or whatever it was, and it's 413.25, this should align with like very, very close to our actual annual range. Do you see that? And off the actual low that held, which was 7,232.5, it should be in line with our 7644. Okay, 7644 is what, you guys? And this is how I know that the math is super accurate. What's the 7644 to 7648 area? I did have a sell order up here, so let me just make sure. Check if I got filled on that. Nope. What's 7644, 7648 area? It's a channel, yes, but it's more than just that, and specifically to that area. I did take a little bit off right here, you guys. I took 2 contracts off. That was my first cover. I actually hadn't covered anything yet. Yep, but what is it, you guys? Come on. There's no way that you guys don't know how important 76447, and I'm showing you why it's important, but what range is that? And specifically to June. Okay, we're hitting our mid-year, semi-annual, like, I have an entire report just about that. So there's no way that you guys don't know what 7644 importance is. What is 7644? I know it's a channel, and I know it's near all-time highs. That's the obvious. But we already discussed that area way before it was ever all-time highs. So what is that area? Why is it important? What kind of range is that? Why is that such a big spot? Yeah, it's an annual range, okay? What day is it today? So think about it. So, and I did publish this report, I think like 3 or 4 weeks ago, in terms of potentially hitting like a hitting annual range as early as mid-year. Yes, right? And it's also the end of what? Our 6-month cycle, right? We're halfway through the year, correct? Yes. Okay, so today is the closing day for mid-year. And that could basically, this structural hold right here, you guys, and these kind of breaks is what could keep us back on track to get back to 7644, 7648, which I know is all-time highs, but like I want you to see it from like that perspective of that being an annual range. Could March 31st be our yearly low on the year? Yeah, if you went 413 times 3, okay, or 426, 429 times 3, you're gonna hit approximately around that 1296, 1278 point range, right? because we're working in these increments, and you guys know this, we've been working in these increments. So, and that would be like 75% of the range. That's going to net you close to, let's go with 429. Okay, it's going to net you very close to that. 431, which has been a very common average. 1293, 1296. Do you see how these areas here are aligned with that? Do you see that, you guys? Like, they're 75% of those core breaks, okay? But they're also that wider range off like 346, right? 356. You're already hitting past that, right? Because if you look at it from 346 over like 4, that's 1384. Okay, so 1384, we haven't quite triggered that just yet. Okay, but when you're looking at this from this kind of like ratio here, like 413 versus, let's say 460, 466. Okay, once you start hitting around this area here, same with this range in here, so let's go 466. That's a little bit off, but that's okay. Oops. Do you see how they're aligned? Do you guys see that? What's 466 times 3? And that's basically what we failed to do when we didn't trigger 7555. Okay, that was a 461 to 466 point range. Does that make sense, you guys? I need this to make sense to you guys, because this will be the last time I explain this, and this is recorded, so at least you can come back and rewatch it. Okay, so do you understand how important the 7550s are? Because they're also the 461, 466 point ranges. They're what we previously failed, okay, hence having that reversal back. And the alignment here is the next break of 461, 466 point ranges would be the same thing as hitting 346 times 4, okay, which is your full ratio, or 461, 466 times 3, which is 75% of that ratio. And that's what would trigger basically 7,700, right? 7,700, 7721, 7740. Does that make sense? And that's how you'd get these kind of areas. And that would be off annual lows, okay? As we start hitting semi-annual year. And obviously these things are what could allow for much, bigger expansion scenarios to occur. Like, this is how we could potentially get to 8K on the year. That's just a very, very quick recap, but I really want you guys to understand just how important these areas actually are. And like on a daily perspective, we have completely negated that daily bear flag now, especially if we close over 7541, 7549. Okay, that would kind of close over this structure. On a 2-day, I already told you guys this yesterday, this wasn't entirely valid. It was only valid for continuation because it did take out the lows, right? We talked about this yesterday, but this is valid because this low was taken out, okay? And it was taken out in time. This was valid for continuation because, again, that low was taken out, okay? So it kind of just keeps this valid. This low was taken out. Then we had a zone hold, and they had some nice continuation. This being an inside bar, though, it kind of weakened what's the right wording for that, or verbiage? The structure is valid, but this being an inside range 3-bar down kind of weakened the amount of range or continuation, I guess, of like volatility that this could have. If this was like maybe closer to down here initially, or like down here, okay, then and like you can see it's close to that 74.54, 74.59. We've talked about this. Then that would have been a lot more volatile. This area also ended up being right around our exact calculated ranges of 75.11, 75.12, okay? And you can kind of see how like these are also aligned back to those annual ranges that we just talked about. 76.11, 76.24, 32, 38, 41, 44, 48. Those are all very important. That would completely negate this. I didn't think that we could fully trigger 7599 today. I did talk about this yesterday. I thought that a lot of it's going to depend on how well they do around the 7550s and specifically during mid session. So between like 12:30, 12:45, 1 and 1:15 p.m. Okay. How we react here and how much we clear is what's going to basically decide if we can get maybe a zone entry as early as today ahead of month end. And that would obviously put us in a much better position starting off the month of July. Is everyone in agreement here? Because that would also be like the closing candle for the month, right? You'd be closing off in a much better state. I like the 30-day a lot more than I like the 1 month. The 30-day is still flagging, and that runs until August 7th. Looks a little bit better than that 1 month does. 31-day flips over tomorrow, which also could form a nice flag. So I already shared these yesterday, but I'm just going to reshare them again. The only thing is with the 31-day, obviously you don't want to go too high if it's not high enough. Does that make sense? So like something like this, if they did, let's say, trigger 7585, 7601, 7599 today, while that's a good thing, it could form like a star-like pattern, correct? So if that was the case, you would need immediate strength to follow on July 1st, meaning we would need like a massive continuation day tomorrow for that to avoid that risk. Otherwise, I would much rather prefer staying within these ranges here. Does that make sense? Like staying red on this time frame to flag would be better than forming a star if there's no follow through continuation. So that's one major reason that I don't really want to get to the zone today. Does that make sense, you guys? Like as much as like it would be nice for a day trade, I don't know if it's good for future range, okay? Because it might be too much too fast, especially if they can't take out 76 like 11, 76, 21, 32, 44, 48 immediately tomorrow. It would kind of have to just be like that continued break. So let's take a look here just real quick. I did cover some of my positions, so I feel more comfortable now actually like kind of covering this. So mid session is usually around 12:45 to 12:48 area. Okay, so you can kind of see the 75, 55 breaks right here. And they did tag it ahead of then around 12:15, 12:16. They were trading a little bit above that before 1. This was important. You see how they kind of breached it just before 1, but then retraced it back up here at 59 and 1. That's also very important. And then 1:15, Brendan was saying, this is mid-session for the actual session, but Brendan was saying that the new JPM caller is around that time today too. So obviously that could cause some volatility anyway, but this is mid-session too for the entire session. So these are very calculated spots to be triggering, especially at this point in the day. Right? And that was exactly what I said this morning and what I said yesterday. If they can get to these areas by mid-session, which is these 7550s, like 55, 58, 61, that is what would give us some odds of maybe getting to these core ranges here today. Okay? 7578, 7581 were very important previously. And you can see obviously on the 31 day and some of these other structures, they're still pretty important, but that would be a more comfortable area if they did decide to continue this afternoon. Otherwise, are we okay to kind of stay within this range? Like if they don't want to take out here and get to here or even tag the zone, okay? Like if the thing is with tagging the zone, they need to take it a little bit higher than just 88. Like they'd have to try tagging 9901, okay, like 7600. So while this looks best for like a day trade, again, it might not be the best case for tomorrow, okay, unless they have like extreme follow through. So another scenario that could be good this afternoon is if they did take it to, you know, like the 60s, but kind of slower grind, maybe tag the 70s this afternoon. I wouldn't be opposed to that, but then like kind of keep it nested in between here. That was my plan. Obviously, I could be wrong. I only took 2 contracts off in here because I figured it's a pretty big spot, but that was my first cover. I initially went long this morning off the 70, off the initial 7501 hold. Okay, like I didn't take it right off the open. It was kind of like when they came in and started back testing a little bit. And that was for today's expiration. And then I took some more calls for today off 7521 when it held right here. And I ended up rolling these contracts into tomorrow. So the ones that I had covered here were the ones that I took off here, just so that you guys are aware, okay? And that's another reason why I held them a bit longer too, is because I bought these ones a bit later. So okay, so this area here, I took my first cover here. This area here, I haven't covered yet, which obviously I will before end of day, but these ones I ended up rolling into tomorrow when when I took the long here. Okay, is everyone on the same page? No, not into tomorrow. I roll those into Thursday. Into the 2nd, not tomorrow. I gave myself a little bit of time on the contract roll from here. I don't have anything for tomorrow. Maybe I might roll these ones into tomorrow, like the remaining ones off the 7521 entries. This one I shared yesterday. It did have like a pretty decent move today. Tesla I mentioned yesterday too. This one I said yesterday this could easily come back to 421. I don't know if anyone traded Tesla, but we talked about this one yesterday. And specifically if it holds off that 74, off that 410, 411, 412, like this range in here is what's linked to like this 419 and then eventually this 423 area. This is kind of the bigger range on Tesla. Tesla actually looks pretty good right here for a nice structure break, actually. These are linked with 423 on these structures too, so that's nice. Does this help you guys have a bit of a better understanding of just overall range today? Market movement. Plug I put in the chat yesterday too to go back long again. This has been a very nice trade. I added back to a new position. This is for some longs off like that 250, 265. And especially if summer starts moving around those solar and EV names. I like Tesla a lot here, actually. If we can get some structural breaks around that 115, 121 period. Another one I liked this morning was AMD. I did share this one super early this morning. Probably back in here. It looked more constructive than some of the other names that I was watching. And obviously ended up being one of the biggest gainers today too. AMD and Tesla were the only two names I shared outside of ES. I didn't really care for too many others, like obviously outside of like some of the smaller cap names, but an oil short this week has been pretty clean too. So let's see if they can end up giving us somewhat of a retracement back here. I think that was a pretty good cover on my part, covering off that 5558 break. Six points in reduction so far is pretty close to that 6-4, because that's our next target. So that makes sense if they reduce range here ahead of mid-session. Like I said, I don't think that they really owe us the zone today. I prefer that we don't get that high today, if anything, just based off structure, and maybe just kind of keeping it here. That being said, though, too, I also don't want it to be back in this range here, because another thing that they could do this afternoon is stalling 5-9, 5-8, 6-1 could still give odds of getting back in the channel. If they bring this back in the channel, you guys, like close to 3-8, 4-1, 4-4, then I would say we're very, very restricted to range. At that point, we probably won't be able to break past like 6-6 or 6-8. Does that make sense? That would likely keep us channel to means bound. So like maybe closer to like the 5-8, 5-9, 6-1, 6-3, 6-4. Okay, and the reason being is that 2-day mid supply, I don't want to stay stuck in there unless they can make a. The only reason why that might be okay if they stay stuck in there, like in here, is maybe if they form a like a, how do I say this, like a mock pattern or like an inverse pattern. That being said, though, that could mean we could stay stuck from July 1st till the 6th. Does that make sense, you guys? And that would make sense from like a shorter week, like perspective, like on a holiday or something like that, like kind of maybe slower or something like that. If they keep it stuck until the 6th, that would kind of keep it maybe stuck inside. It'd be like a mirroring pattern of this. So like take this, flip it upside down, and then we don't get any range breaks until after the 6th. So that's one scenario if they take us back into this range in here. Okay, is everyone on the same page? So this is if they kind of take us back to this mid supply range, which is like right around here. And again, that would obviously limit range on the session today. Okay? That's one mock scenario if they take us back down beneath 7549 and keep us, basically you'd stay above 7511 but beneath the 7549. Okay, and one of the scenarios that could happen if they did that this week is they could maybe recycle range for the second half of the week. So because this candle flips tomorrow, it'd be for the 1st and 2nd, because the 3rd is closed. So, and it's only a 2-day time frame. So for the next 2 days, they could kind of keep it stuck inside. That would be a better looking structure, if anything, if they did something like that, because then it'd give them more momentum building up for the 6 flip date. Does that make sense? Because the 6 is our big flip to maybe have like a break of like these highs, like 7624, 763844, so on and so forth. So this wouldn't be like the worst case scenario, but it could make for a boring second half of the week if that was the case. So I'm just going to put this in here as a probability. And like I said, a lot of this is going to be relative to how we react the 75.55, 75.58, 75.61 during mid-session. What are we doing right now during mid-session, you guys? It's crazy because the market is so calculated. What are we doing right now? We're literally reacting to the 75.50s during mid-session, right? It's just so funny how it plays out because this is what is going to dictate how not only the session could play out in the second half, but the remainder of the week. Right, our goal is to try getting out of that channel by mid-session. Okay, if they wanted to keep it in between, that mid-supply range is technically enough. This is what I'm talking about. This is that mid-supply range, okay? So, like, between there. And a lot of this is relative to if we can get enough momentum during mid-session around these areas here. I sent these this morning. So, and here we are now during mid-session in these 50s. Okay. Does it all kind of come together, you guys? Like, I want you guys to view the market in a different way than how other people view it, so that you feel way more confident when you're trading. I felt super confident taking a cover off 75, 55, and 58, okay? I didn't think I was selling too early. I didn't think that back in here I was gambling by just holding on to my calls. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want you guys to build like that level of confidence that you feel like you know what you're doing. Obviously the market's always going to have some risk and some implications. That's just how it is sometimes, especially with headline news and things like that. But there's so many things that stood out today, right? So many of them. One, what was one of our big conditions for yesterday? Closing where? 7495, right? Correct? We talked about this yesterday. We wanted to close at least above 7488, ideally, right? We really wanted to close there yesterday, so that was good. Remember in real time yesterday, I kept telling you guys, let's go back to yesterday. Remember real time yesterday, I kept telling you guys, if they don't bring us to 7511, that's okay, as long as they can kind of keep us above 7488 and close around 7495. There was a little bit of range here, like maybe 7 points in range, okay? What could we have afforded yesterday? And I mentioned this several times yesterday. Go back and rewatch the stream. Could we have afforded some risk to 7478, 7479, 7481 yesterday in real time? And I even said we're even okay pinning there if the market is not quite ready to commit to the zone. However, I would prefer that we pin the zone because that's going to give us the better odds for tomorrow. Yes. Okay. So I already knew that this was an area of risk that we could afford. But I would have preferred to close in the zone because this is going to give us a much better odd. Okay. So, okay. Now going forward. Okay. They ended up closing us like literally right around our 9.5, opening us right at 9.5, which is crazy because that's our calculated spot. And then they nested a little bit, tagged, stalled, and then boom, look at where they bring it back to. Okay, right to our spot. Okay, so it's the exact same differential beneath the zone. Do you see this? Around that 8180. Okay, this was a perfect overnight hold. So we held 7479, 7481 overnight. That's great. The next condition is we have to tag 7511, 7512, especially on a hold like this. Okay, and you can see like this is so constructive, you guys. Once you start setting conditions, and don't just sit there and wait on me to set them. That honestly sometimes it makes me annoyed, because when someone asks me what's the overnight conditions, like why don't you try planning them? Because you should technically know what they are. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone in here should know that. I said it on the mic, but everyone should know that that's obviously where we want to hold. Okay, like this is what's constructive. We obviously know that we need to try taking out 7505 and go to 7511. So one condition met. Okay, great. They held this area here. Perfect. Second condition is going to obviously be to try tagging 7499, 7501. Next condition, you obviously want to hold the zone now, right? So 7488 hold, that's perfect. You have nothing left to do at this point, but what? Obviously test 7511, 7512, right? Like that's the only thing that was left to do at this point, was to test these areas up here. Okay? Something that also stood out to me last night is prior to testing that, do you see how nicely they held 7495 right here? Okay? And then even after they took out 7505, they stalled 7508 just a tiny bit, but they did a great job of holding 7501. Okay? And they held above that 7499. Okay, they held above that 7499, like this area here, 7498, by like roughly 2-3 points. So I figured, okay, that's pretty constructive. That means that maybe when they come to take out 7511, 7512, they probably could break by like 2-3 points. Okay, so this was really good price action. Okay, this is exactly my overnight plan. This is what last night is exactly how we wanted to see things play out. Okay, had they continued clearing, okay, to like 7522, 7528, that could have done one of two things. One, it could have either limited range in real-time session relative to how we react around the channel, right? That's where you could see a recycled range back down to core to core. Like you could have seen like 7521, maybe you stall here, maybe they bring it back to 7479, 7481. Does that make sense? And then pin back the zone flat around 7495. That could have been one scenario. Second scenario is if they had cleared 7521 last night to 728 and then got to the channel, cleared 7550s, maybe they could have had some high odds of getting to 7570s, 7580s today. Does that make sense? Like you have to kind of think about it from like an odd perspective. So, but for me, this was more than enough. That's all I was really looking for. So once they kind of stalled here and they took out 7514, 7512, I'm like, okay, that's good. They took out the top of the neutral zone. They took out 7512, 11. All we really have to do now is what? Hold that zone, right? Like I really don't want to fail the zone now. Like back in here yesterday, okay, and back in here overnight, you could afford 75, 79, 75, 81. But after triggering 75, 11, do you really want to go back to 75, 74, 81? Or do you really want to try holding 7488, ideally 77501, okay? Or you could technically afford 7495, 7498 area too. Like that area is still okay. Okay, so, and you can kind of see like the structural hold here overnight. They brought it back, took out 18. Again, not quite like the full break right here to like 2-1 or something, which, like I said, is fine. Like it's not fully required, but you can kind of see how like there's some little tiny like discrepancies, but that was fine because we could afford, you know, another 3 points to 4 points beneath there. Like going back to these areas here is okay. Like it's not the end of the world, which is exactly what they did after stalling there. Okay, like we could have afforded some risk here. The stall of 2-1. Okay, so they brought it back down. This actually made a really nice short this morning in pre-market. They held the zone. We don't want bears taking control, basically, okay? And these were also calculated areas around 7495. They brought the open and opened it right at 7,500 in real time. That's technically constructive from where they closed yesterday, right? So it's in the neutral zone, which can still, It's bear neutral, but still, like, we have some odds of, like, avoiding, like, bears avoiding, like, beneath 7,500. Okay? I think so, too. Like, over 9.9 was good. Even over 9.5 would have been okay, but 9.5 could have still given some odds of volatility. 7,500 was a pretty good open, and mainly because they held right off the open. Do you see this? Like, they tried to push it down, and they held within the first 5 minutes. And if you guys notice here, like, this little relative strength, especially, like, once they took out 75.11, do you guys see the strength on the 75.11 break right here? Okay, do you see it? And what immediately followed after the 75.11 break? Like, it's important to understand price action, you guys. What happened on the 75.11 break? Look, this was our calculated area, 752122. What happened here right after they took out 75.11, 75.18? Overnight high stalled 18. They tagged 752122, correct? That would have been the next condition. At this point in the session, so Booth, get this. At this point in the session, a 7,500 open is good with the condition that you take out 75.11, 75.18, 75.22. Does that make sense? Like, that is an okay open if you sustain and test. Because they had already tested 75.11, 75.18 overnight, your odds were way higher that you're going to test upside first, okay? Because market doesn't just drop, especially if they held all conditions overnight, which they did, okay? Its condition was to try retesting this and tagging this, okay? It didn't necessarily have to come and immediately clear 2-2, but at least try tagging that, okay? This is what reduced risk. Had we stalled around here, okay, 11 or 18, we would have easily recycled back down. Does that make sense? Like this range that they had right here on this break, I assure you 1,000%, if they had stalled 18 or something like that, they would have recycled it back down to here, back to open, and then maybe tried again. Does that make sense to you guys? I really want you guys to see structure and price in a way that, like, you know the scenarios that can happen if it doesn't clear certain areas. Like, it's so important to understand if and or scenarios, okay? That would have been the scenario if they had stalled here. Okay, so that would have been your first major condition, is obviously testing 2-1-2-2, but then taking it out. Your next big spot is 75.32, which is the top of the zone and exactly where they ended up stalling, right? What stood out back here? Something stood out to me back here. I'm just going over this now that we have some time. So something that stood out here is, okay, this was a really good test of 3-2. Okay. This was a really good hold of 15 and 12. This was a good hold of 18, correct? How do I know that they were going to stall the channel a little bit? This was one of the first takeaways for me, you guys, that they were going to stall the channel a little bit and not completely clear it right away. One was mainly here, okay? I feel like had they maybe held closer to 2-3, 2-2, so kind of like, you see that reduction that we had back here? And same sort of idea here, okay, like off here, like beneath 9.5, because 9.5 is more ideal. Does this make sense? So 7.495 versus 74.90. 7.518 versus 7.52223. Are you guys on the same page? Okay. There was a little tiny reduction. It wasn't like the worst thing because we're still hitting our ranges. This just means that they could compress range a little bit. So back in here, like, okay, this is okay because they at least took out 3-2. Right? Because that means that they took out this range up in here above 2.728. This should be closer to 2.8. And taking out 4 points above 2.8 basically reduced risk of us going back to 75.11. But obviously 2.223 would have been a bit stronger of a hold, right? This early. I assure you that that would have likely gotten us at least a test of like this 4.6, 4.7. Okay, like these ranges in here. So I knew almost immediately that they were likely going to start compressing here a little bit. Then back in here, when they like fully took it down back to 75.16. Okay, this is kind of what confirmed that for me. Okay, And you can measure off both 2.3 and 2.8, but I just want to show you guys. Do you see what I mean? Does this make sense to you guys? Like this was a huge part of the reason why I figured they're likely going to stall this today. And not by a lot, but probably at least by a little bit. And remember how earlier we looked at this and it was a roughly like 16-ish points back in here? I don't know if you guys remember this. Okay, that was also a common theme on like max range. So like the overall reversal off 7532. Okay, back down to here, back to here, back to the top of the zone. Okay, off this low. These could end up being what? Please don't get this wrong. But this is why this kind of played out like this, because as opposed to coming here, holding here, breaking here, okay, coming back, holding here, breaking here, okay. Do you get what I'm saying? I need you guys to try understanding this. What could this mean? Okay, do you see what I'm saying? Look. Where are they stalling? Do you guys see it? Please say yes. I really want you guys to try understanding like different scenarios and why they play out like that. So as soon as I saw this and this breach right here, okay, and then the stall at 3.8. 3.8's a good stall. That was 3.8's a very important level, but I knew if they didn't hold 2.2, 2.8 back in here, that they're likely they're gonna spend a little bit more time here compressing range, and that could really start limiting around here, okay? Like our 5.8, 5.9, 5.5, 5.6, these ranges in here, okay? And that's exactly where they stalled. What do you notice now that's progressive though? Like this looks way better now, okay, now that they've kind of come back here. Okay, now they've tested that first target. Do you see it? Let me zoom in a little bit. Do you guys see that? Right here? And now they're holding 4.9. Do you see what I'm saying? This is now a good 4.9 hold. A 5.8, 5.9 test. Okay, another 4.9 hold. Now you have to have some pressure of taking out 5.8, 5.9. Otherwise, that's what could then recycle it back to these areas in here. Okay? And you can also like measure these off these ratios. So like your next range would be around like maybe this 6.5. Okay, this area in here like 6.5, 6.4. Okay, 70. That's why I was saying earlier, I feel like even if they break the 50s today, they could really limit it around that 7.5, 6.1, 7.5, 6.4, 7.5, 6.8, 7.5, 7.1. Does that make sense? If you use just basic zone theory, yes, exactly, because this is like that would have been a perfect break of zone, break of channel. Do you know what I mean? Like you could use it in that sense of things too. Or if it's easier for you to just look at reductions, but this is exactly why they're stalling here, like to give you guys an idea. Aside from it being like that 461 point range, there's also been about like 25 points. So this could be a very simplified way of you guys understanding this too is, okay, they could max range around here. Okay, they reduce basically around 25 points. I feel like that could be an easier way of you guys looking at that from like an overall range perspective. Okay, and specifically off like, you know, 3.2. Okay, you'd have to probably start holding around here to get to here. Does that make sense? Off of 2.1. Where is it? Sorry. Or 2.3. You'd probably have to start breaking around here. Does that make sense? Like, this would be linked to 75, 21, 23. This area here, off our 75, 41 stall. This area here, it's the same differential, okay? And that's why breaking this would imply some relative strength to 7.5, 6.7, which makes sense from the zone theory, because that would be like a core hold, and a core, even though this isn't like a core, this would be like a, basically a, I don't know what word for that, like I don't know the proper verbiage to use. That's like, it would be like a, basically like a correlation to core to core. So like that range would be a link to a core level that could net you to a core area. Does that make sense? So like 7523 to 7568. I don't really know how to say that in like proper wording, but that's what that would entail, okay? Whereas like this right here is the overhead, okay? Off 7541. So that's why you'd have to break that 59 area to try getting there. And this would be like the full range. Okay. The same idea. Hence, like them coming back in the channel right now, it's the same thing as like them potentially coming back to 2-3. Does this make sense? Because now you're putting yourself at some risk. From a zone theory, it makes sense. From a range theory, this is how it's correlated to one another. Okay, as like this area being an overhead, this being a potential break. If they hold this area and clear here, okay, if they fail this area and come back here, they could come back to 2-3. Does this make sense to you guys? Like, I'm trying to make you see it from like how they could recycle range this afternoon, specific to how these areas are so important. From a range perspective, off open, okay, like from here, okay, where this is probably the 66, 64 point, oh yeah, it is. See? Like that is so clean because neutral areas are usually aligned to 34, 44, 66 point ratios, okay? So from today's open off 7,500, 66 points is 75, 66. Okay, that's a very dumbed down way of looking at this. If you're not someone that wants to, I'm just showing you guys the advanced minute by minute, tick by tick reductions, ratios, so that you understand like exactly precisely why they're stalling there. If you want a very, very basic approach, yes, like Booth is saying, use my basic zone theory or the basic range theory, okay? So these would be basically 66 points from open. But it's crazy that 66 points from open aligns with this 25 point reduction off highs. Do you know what I mean? Like that's also pretty funny to me. Like how there's always alignment here. And the fact that they broke this during mid-session is even crazier to me. Okay, so let's say off like real-time lows, they have probably already, oh no, they hit 64 points. So off real-time lows, then this is where they could start stalling the means, like 7562, 7561. Okay, that is probably pretty likely. We still have some odds of getting 68, 66 today, but you know, a lot of it's going to depend on whether or not they hold between like 41, 44, 49. I feel like the lower 60s make sense if they breach the channel but still hold above 3.8. You know what I mean? Whereas if they fail 3.8, we probably won't get above the high of day. Does that make sense? Like I feel like a lot of it's going to be relative to where they hold in here. And then off overall overnight lows, this is probably like that 77, 79 point range. And that makes sense because that's a core ratio. 8.5, 8.4 is core, right? What kind of ratios do you get with core? So that being said, could that be enough range to be a max high of day off the overnight lows, session lows is a core level, which means high odds of a core ratio. Does that make sense, you guys? I hope that made some light bulbs go off. Like, oh my God, oh, I get it. That makes sense. Does that make sense? Technically, the means are core, right? That's why I've started labeling them as mid-core so that you guys don't get confused. But I'm just going to assume it makes sense to everyone. That's great. Perfect. Makes sense. These are core ratios for those that are still either fairly new or still just don't quite understand. Okay. Okay. So, them opening in a neutral spot, we probably have more odds of like these mid-core ratios, right? 77, 78 points off overnight lows. Okay, that could be probable, right? If they really wanted to expand us today and give us those upper core ratios, that's how we could see those 75, 80s, 70s. Do you get what I'm saying? Off of today's real-time lows, it would probably be closer to us hitting an 88 point range. And that makes sense because these are more in line with neutral spots. Okay, 34, 44, 66, 88. Do you get what I'm saying? Okay, I want you guys to understand how neutral levels align with core areas. I've said this several times, but it's because of the ratios. It's because of how their ratios net to these spots, okay? And then off of like the actual session open, session close, okay, which would be here, or yesterday's highs. This is important, I think, to look at too. So off session open, session close, which I still think is good to kind of look at. Like that 749593 area. Off 749593, off session, we've already hit 66 points. Okay, or like pretty close to it. 65.75, I think. Yes. Okay, this is off session open. Session close. So off session close, almost 66 points. Okay. Off of today's session open, which is the 9.5 area. 66 points is around 6.1. Okay. Off of yesterday's session highs. 6.3. Okay. Off 75.05, 7.1. Do you guys understand why there's a lot of confluence around 75, 58, 75, 61, 75, 64, 75, 66, 75, 68, 75, 71? Yes, right? Do you understand that expansion scenario would be clearing these areas probably before 3, and that's what could net you 75, 78, 75, 81, 75, 84, so on and so forth. That would be the equivalent of 88 points off session open, session close, okay? Or full core ratios off session lows, okay? Which would be like 103, 107, 110, 115 points. We're currently hitting mid to full ratios right now. Okay, so that's the breakdown from a range perspective. Okay, guys? So again, like I said, a lot of this today now is basically market doesn't really owe us anything now. It's honestly if it wants to give us that extra leg room. And a lot of this is going to be relative to, like I said, holding above this 4.8, 4.9, 4.4, okay, obviously ideally over 4.8, 4.9, like that's going to be the more ideal area, with the condition that they take out, I don't know why this keeps getting deleted, with the condition that they take out obviously 5.9, okay, and 5.8, because these are some really big spots here. Next major overhead is around this 60, 61, 61.5. The more and more they keep recycling this within these ranges here, so beneath 5.8, 5.5, and above 3.8, 4.1, 4.4 area, then they can just keep this stuck and recycled. Okay? I think I'm going to sign off for now. Maybe I'll be back for last hour of the day. I'm going to make lunch. I hope this helped you guys have a better understanding of like how they can cap range here, why we have some odds of like this range in here from a structural perspective, how they can keep it stuck off like a 2 day. Be prepared in case they do recycle range for the next 2 days. And honestly, sometimes uh, with these shorter weeks and holidays, that can happen. So today being like a good day is great, but I am being prepared for that just in case. And that would be the case if they obviously keep it pinned today beneath 7555, 7558. That to me just makes logical sense that way. So being pinned in a channel could obviously net some back and forth or something. Okay. Okay, I might be back for the maybe last half hour of the day or something today if I feel like it's worth it. If not, then I'll probably just post some notes on that